Welcome to Season 2 of the Empower to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Dina Tipsherini, and I'm so excited to take you on a journey through the ups and downs of motherhood. Together, we are going to learn, prepare for, and unearth all things motherhood, because I believe that exposure and awareness can lead to empowerment. So buckle up for an unfiltered, raw, and insightful journey. Hello and welcome back to the Empower to Heal podcast, Season 2. I'm here today to talk to you about something heavy, and this is trauma. We've been talking about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders on the podcast for the past few weeks, and I mentioned last week when we were talking about anxiety disorders that PTSD is one of them. And I wanted to spend time specifically going into PTSD or birth trauma, trauma that we carry in motherhood. And so I'm here with you today, and I'm starting a ritual with my podcasts. Podcasting for me has been something that I've gone through seasons with, and I am a one-woman show when it comes to podcasting. And so I feel like it's time that I start a ritual to support my brain and my body in slowing down and coming to the space of being present with you, sharing my knowledge and insights and experiences, and hosting guests who can speak to their experiences as well as their expertise. So I just lit a candle and I have my cacao with me right now. I enjoy drinking cacao and having a little ceremony every single morning. And I always include a scoop of functional mushroom powder in my cacao. I absolutely love how it supports my immunity, as well as my cognitions, having clear thoughts, feeling present. And so I have my cacao here with us today, and it's so delicious. For those of you who don't know what cacao is not hot chocolate. It is actual 100% cacao. And this is ceremonial grade cacao from the Rucuchuleu clan in Guatemala. And I feel so blessed to sit in sacred ceremony with this cacao each day to support opening my heart. I have been going through seasons of grief and trauma myself in life, and having and holding space intentionally was something that I truly deeply enjoy and feel the remarkable effects of is just such a sacred practice. And so here I am grounding myself to talk with you about trauma, holding space, opening my heart with my cacao, and lighting a candle to be present and intentional with you. I invite you to grab some tea, cacao, water, coffee, mushroom coffee, whatever serves you for this conversation. Because when we talk about trauma and we try to understand, do we have symptoms of PTSD, it can feel really triggering. And so grounding ourselves into our senses, into slowing down, supports us in regulating our nervous system and communicating to ourselves that it's okay. We are safe. We are okay. Oh, we can talk about this and be safe and feel safe. So let's dive in. Let's talk trauma. Now, I want to start this discussion sharing that trauma is in the eye of the beholder. Nobody can tell you that what you experienced wasn't traumatic, and you can't tell somebody else the same thing. Trauma is something that we each uniquely hold and experience. And what creates trauma in our body are experiences that were big and impactful to us that often cause us or leave us feeling a loss of control, a loss of sense of safety, feeling in danger, something terrifying or terrible that has happened. It could be something that someone else perceives as catastrophic, like war. And it can also be something that others might not even think was traumatic for you, but it was because you were stripped of your dignity, or you were stripped of your power and your control, or you were taken advantage of. You lost control of your body in that moment. And that's oftentimes where birth trauma can come into play. So, our upbringing and our life experiences, our living conditions, our finances, our support system, our ancestry, our lineage, right? Our genetic code all impacts our experiences during birth. And it all impacts how we experience what we're going through. So during childbirth, we walk this really thin line between life and death. And I know that sounds dramatic, but for anybody who has birthed a child, you know exactly what I mean. Our body is it's a portal bringing life into this world, and we face the verge of death to bring life in. We go to the very limits of what our bodies can do in order to bring life in. And we feel how sacred and special and precious life is as we're birthing. I know for me, the fragility and miracle of life and that ride we take on that like tsunami of emotions as we bring our baby into this world, it's what was traumatic for me for part of my birth. This realization that what was once inside me, this little life that was once contained in my womb and safe from the world, is now out of my womb. We were separate. He was no longer physically a part of my body, living within me, housed within my sacred tomb, keeping him safe. And when we separate from our little one, who we grew so carefully within us, our bodies remember their life within us, while our arms hold their life outside of us, outside in a world that we have no control over. The very act of birthing our child reminds us of the fragility of this veil, this line that separates us between life and death. And that can be enough for us to experience trauma. I know for me, as soon as my baby was in my arms and I looked at him, I had this realization like, holy smokes, I did it. Holy smokes, I did it. He's in my arms. And oh my gosh, he's in my arms. Oh my gosh, he's here. Oh my gosh, there's all of these people around me. Oh my gosh, they want to poke him. They want to take his blood. They want to assess and evaluate him. Oh my gosh, they want to take him out of my arms. They want to weigh him. I had this immediate, like, whoa, like he was sacred and he was just mine inside my womb, inside my belly for so long. And now the world is chiming in, and the world is interfering with that sense of safety and control I once had. And that realization was enough for me to feel the effects of anxiety hitting me over the head. So, PTSD is a type of anxiety disorder. And I want to share the statistics, the prevalence rates. Up to 45% of women who report that their births were traumatic end up experiencing PTSD, while about 4% of the general public will experience PTSD. So if you did have a traumatic birth, what you would call traumatic in any way, shape, or form, you have higher chances of experiencing PTSD. I also want to say that the prevalence rates increase from the general population to about 18% for those who have a history of complications during pregnancy, complications with their newborn baby, a history of psychiatric illness, or a history of maternal depression. That increases their risk for developing PTSD. It goes from 4% for the general population up to a risk of 18% of people who will experience PTSD with a history of depression, illness, or complications with their pregnancy or their baby. Now, I mentioned birth trauma, and I'm sure some of you can think in your brain what a traumatic birth would look like. I want to step into this space and honor that no matter your experiences, you define what was traumatic or felt safe and sacred for you. Birth trauma occurs during labor and birth with our baby. You may perceive that something's not going well. You may feel threatened in some way. Your safety's at risk, your baby's safety's at risk. That perceived experience is enough to be trauma for you. And it's a threatened injury to you or your baby, or threats of death to you or your baby. Being stripped of your dignity can also lead to feeling like you had a traumatic birth. Oftentimes, people who experience birth trauma report feeling intense fear during labor or delivery. They reported feeling helpless, everything was out of their control, or felt horror during pregnancy or during labor or delivery. And traumatic perinatal events can be many different things. It could be having an emergency C-section. I wish I could see you all right now. I would say by a show of hands, how many of you had an unplanned C-section where you were in the process of laboring to birth your baby, and it was told to you that you now need to have a C-section? That can create this sense of trauma, this loss of control, being stripped of your choice in that moment, being told you have to do this for the safety of your child and your baby. And oftentimes we can wonder, like, was it worth it? Did this means to an end of having a C-section or being induced actually create a safe birth for me and my baby? Would it have been safe another way? I do want to share that America has a very high rate of C-sections compared to other countries. And we have a very high rate of inducing mamas. We believe that the body isn't able to safely birth the baby without medical intervention. Yet, medical interventions didn't come around in our westernized world until recently. Prior to that, we did birth our babies naturally. And this does not say that we don't need medical intervention for extreme situations, but oftentimes C-sections are jumped to prematurely, and inducing is jumped to prematurely because there's a lack of understanding of what labor truly is and what that journey is. And many of us are not attuned to our bodies to trust that we can do this, that we can move and breathe our babies out, that we can truly birth our babies without medication forcing that birth or without being cut open and having our baby removed from our womb. That's probably another discussion for another day. I feel like having a guest speaker on talking about that would be really powerful, just to enlighten and share the risks that we do face when we jump into always having medical intervention rather than truly trying to tap into the power that we have within ourselves to birth. Other things that can be traumatic perinatal events: postpartum hemorrhaging, having a premature birth, having a stillborn. The rates of stillborns are actually very high in our country. Unexpected NICU visits for our babies, having our baby forcefully removed from us during vaginal birth via forceps or a vacuum extraction, experiencing severe preeclampsia, having 3rd to 4th degree tears or lacerations from your birth, something called hyperemesis, which I've met quite a few people who experienced this during pregnancy. It's this extreme morning sickness, this inability to keep food and even water down, constantly throwing up, not gaining weight during your pregnancy, but oftentimes losing weight or just gaining a few pounds. And then in the postpartum season, sometimes this can last into early postpartum where you're losing weight drastically because it's very difficult to keep food and water down. That can increase your experiences of having a traumatic transition into birthing your baby and bringing your baby home. Having a traumatic vaginal birth, having fetal anomaly diagnosed during pregnancies, witnessing your partner's birth experience so you don't have to physically be the one who goes through the traumatic event to solely experience trauma. Some people go through what I would deem as a traumatic event and they did not experience it as traumatic, but my witnessing it was traumatic for me. And I have my own trauma to heal from that secondary experience. So, partners witnessing their person giving birth to their baby and things going in a different way than they thought, or realizing what birth actually looks like and feeling the trauma of that. Having a long labor or having the pain medication or fail or having reactions to the pain medication. I know a lot of people have shared their epidurals didn't work or they got hives and extremely itchy from the epidural. They didn't know that that was going to be a side effect. Some people experience paralysis for many months after having an epidural. Again, these are low chances that it'll happen to you, but it does happen. And it's interesting enough that people in my circle, even before stepping into the birth world, people in my circle had these experiences. And so it is that common to know somebody that had a reaction or a failed experience with the pain medication during labor and delivery. So traumatic events can be a multitude of things, and they can be more than one thing. Again, trauma is in the eye of the beholder. I'm going to go ahead and take a sip of my cacao. I know I brought up a lot of things in sharing that, and I brought up a lot of things for myself, just to be totally transparent. My pregnancy with my son, the first, I don't know, entire trimester, I guess you can say, was riddled with, is this a viable pregnancy or not? Is this a tubal pregnancy? Getting scheduled for surgery for a tubal pregnancy, then him moving out of the tubes into my womb, knowing the statistics of people in my family and having miscarriages and feeling my start into that journey being very iffy and uncertain contributed to the rest of my pregnancy feeling very nervous to tell people about it, nervous to connect to my baby for fear that he wasn't actually going to be born healthy or alive. And then my birth journey was beautiful and sacred. And I broke my tailbone birthing my son. I re-broke it, I should say. I broke my tailbone as a little girl and it healed incorrectly. And then when my son came out, it broke again. I also tore terribly and had to be stitched up. And that whole journey was really painful. I had an unmedicated birth. And so that created a lot of trauma for me. And then my experience in the first 4 days of my baby's life created a lot of trauma for me. So as I'm saying all of this and sharing this information, I just want you to know you're not alone if you feel this. And if you start having flashbacks in your brain as I'm sharing this to your birth or relating to what I'm saying, and you start feeling that inside your body, I invite you to take a deep breath with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth, with your belly soft and relaxed. Maybe take a sip of the drink that you have in front of you, something nourishing. And come back to this moment. Motherhood is a beautiful journey, but it can also be overwhelming. Do you often find yourself feeling isolated, struggling to find balance and yearning for a sense of identity beyond mom, trust me, you're not alone. Join the Empowered Mamas Club, where you'll discover a supportive community of like minded mothers. Gain valuable skills to navigate those highs and lows of motherhood, reclaim your sense of self, and become the engaged and present mom that you desire so that you can create cherished moments with your little ones. It's time to prioritize your well being and rediscover the joy in motherhood. Click the link in the show notes and join us in the Empowered Mamas Club today. Many moms report they perceived a lack of care during their birth journey. They felt abandoned. They felt like they were stripped of their dignity. The support that they thought they would have wasn't there. They felt like they didn't have enough support. They didn't have the reassurance they needed as they walked that thin line of life and death, bringing life into this world, feeling the fragility of it. They didn't feel the support that they needed in that season. Oftentimes, moms report it's poor communication that contributed to the trauma they experienced. They felt invisible in the delivery room. Decisions were being made for them and about them, and they felt like they didn't have a say. It was this or death. You must do this or your baby will die. Hearing those words, you feel like you have no choice but to do whatever the person in front of you is saying and trust them, because you'll do anything to bring your baby into this world safely. You will die to bring your baby into this world safely. When you're on that delivery table or you're in that position and you're birthing your baby and there's a complication, it's like your entire being just knows that delivering this baby is all that matters. And the pain and the hurt and the trauma and being stripped of your dignity, it all comes in like a tidal wave, and you do what you have to do. And then afterwards, you can be left feeling disconnected from your body. What just happened? You might have been terrified and scared and just, okay, yes, do whatever you have to do. That feeling of feeling powerless can be overwhelming. And then sometimes when we reflect back on it, we can feel betrayed. Like, I trusted those nurses, I trusted my team to show up for me, to advocate, to say what I needed them to say, to be my voice when I was so scared and couldn't find my own. And I feel like they betrayed me. I feel like they did what they thought they wanted rather than what they knew that I would want. I feel like decisions had to be made so quickly that me and my body and my safety didn't get taken into consideration. I didn't feel protected by the staff who were there to support me. I didn't feel held by them. And then we wonder, do the means really justify the end? Did I really have to go through all of that and carry all of this trauma and experience this well into motherhood and have this be my story? Did I really have to? Was there another way to birth a healthy baby and feel safe in the process? I don't have an answer to this, but these are questions that we wonder. Those of us who have experienced trauma, those of us who have experienced a traumatic birth or labor, these are things that we wonder. And sometimes we just tell ourselves, well, I guess my story is not unlike so many others. So many people I know had to have an emergency C-section, or so many people I know had to have an epidural, even though they didn't really want one when they started the journey. So many people I know had to just shut up and do what the doctor said in order to get their baby there safely. So maybe this is the norm. And sometimes telling ourselves that can help. It truly can, because we don't feel so alone. When you go through something traumatic alone, it compounds the trauma you experience and you feel. When you go through something traumatic and you have other people to relate to and to process with, it can support in healing that trauma a whole lot quicker, or even preventing the trauma. There's a really interesting study that was done around 9/11, and there was a lot of trauma response that flooded over to New York during 9/11 with the intention of, we need to help. This was a catastrophic event that happened, and it's impacting our country far and wide. And there were so many survivors that are impacted by the loss and the trauma of being present or seeing it. There's documentaries about this. Yet they learned through their studies and their support for this population, when all of these therapists and counselors and first responders came to the scene, they learned that because everybody was running away from the trade centers as they were falling, rather than running to it alone, they were all running away together. This decreased their long-standing trauma, right? It decreased the effects of having PTSD because they did it together. And the state and the country was mourning together. And they had this support of not being in it alone. And so we do this as mothers. We seek out others who had traumatic birth experiences to hear and hold space for what their experiences was. And then a part of us feels like, oh, they understand, they get it. I'm not alone. And we can start rationalizing or working through some of our experiences, releasing some of the trauma that's within ourselves. Let's talk about when trauma turns to PTSD. So I just mentioned that the trauma experience with 9/11, there was protective factors involved that reduced the amount of people who experienced PTSD. And that was because they experienced it together. They ran away together from the trade centers. They were together during that healing process. Now, what is the difference from trauma and PTSD? Now, one of the big things is how long you experience the symptoms of trauma for and what those symptoms look like. So, you can have PTSD by experiencing, witnessing, having indirect exposure to traumatic experiences. Like I said before, you don't have to be the one experiencing it, but you could have experienced it. Maybe you witnessed it, maybe you indirectly were exposed to that traumatic event and you're experiencing the symptoms of PTSD. And the causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social interactions, work, or areas of functioning. So if the trauma causes you to not be able to be present at work, you're struggling with being around other people, you feel like you want to isolate yourself. It's difficult to do daily activities that were once simple and easy. It might be hard to shower, to get up and going in your day, to go on a drive to the grocery store, to take your kids to school, to be present and manage your kids' emotions, to make it to the doctor's appointments on time. It might be really difficult to return to work because you feel like the anxiety is so much. Or you might return to work and then realize, holy smokes, this is hard. I don't think I can do this. I can't be whole and do my job and be away from my child and regulate my emotions. And all of these experiences, for it to be classified as PTSD, they can't be a result of other medical conditions. They can't be a result of some medications or of substances that you're using. They have to be a result of the traumatic event itself. So we have to kind of weed that out. Now, if the symptoms of PTSD last more than a month after the traumatic event, then we can say that it's PTSD. Because trauma stays in the body for a bit, my friends. Trauma will linger in your body until it's released and moved through your body. And our fascia, our skin, our fascia, our body, our essence of being holds onto trauma. It's not just our thoughts. Some people are like, can't you just think of something else? Right? Can't you will yourself out of this? If you want to be better, just be better. It doesn't work that way. Our bodies hold on to the trauma. That's why we feel these experiences of trauma within our bodies, often like panic. Our heart's racing. We start sweating. We have flashbacks. We have moments where we're brought away from the present moment and our brain thinks that we're back in that traumatic space. We have the intrusive thoughts that creep in. So there's 4 subcategories of PTSD. We're going to go through this through like the diagnostic statistical manual for someone who would diagnose PTSD. I find that it's helpful to know and understand what the symptoms are so that you can assess and evaluate, is this something that is affecting you? And if so, what do you want to do about it? Because you have choices and options. So, intrusion is one subcategory of PTSD. So, that's the flashbacks that I was talking about. It's the somatic complaints. It's the stomach aches, it's the headaches, it's the sweating, it's the heart racing, the palpitations, having distressing memories that are creeping in and just really like causing this cycle, contributing to this cycle of experiences, somatic experiences you're having, and then feeling physically reactive. Like your body is physically reacting to this trauma, right? You can't sit still. You can't hold it together one more minute, right? We feel this as mothers and parents, I should say, when we have infants and maybe our little one's going through a stage where they're not sleeping well or they're sleeping less than they were. And we are not having a chance to let our body rest and heal. If you're not getting deep sleep, if you're not going into REM sleep, your body's going to have a really hard time to heal. And many of us in early motherhood, we're not getting REM sleep. We're up every 2 to 3 hours feeding our baby, right? And then once we make it past those first few months and our baby starts like sleeping maybe another 30 minutes longer, maybe we enter into that REM sleep, but we're like jolted out of it. This can lead to what we call chronic sleep deprivation. And the fatigue and the impact of this, it messes with our nervous system, our ability to be present and calm and regulated. And we can just feel like we're going to snap. We're just going to lose it. And that builds up inside our bodies. And so it might be like you set your baby down and you walk out the door and you have like a full blown like moment, right? Like stomping your feet, clenching your hands, punching the air. I don't know, but a moment where it comes out of your body. That's what it looks like for me, by the way. And we can be physically reactive when we have these flashbacks. When we come back, we're on edge. All of a sudden, the baby's crying. We're needed. Our body's like dysregulated because it just went back to a distressing moment. And physically, we just can't take it anymore. We might physically react to that. Okay. Avoidance is another subcategory. Feeling like we have a smaller range and less intense emotions. Like more, we call it flat affect. You kind of live in this safe space of I'm not getting too excited. I'm not getting too overwhelmed. I'm not showing I'm so stressed. I'm not like losing my cool all the time. I'm just kind of present. That might be feeling a little bit like that disassociating from the moment just to survive. Like I am a robot. You might also withdraw from your social circles. You might be in denial about what you're experiencing. You might be avoiding. And then you also might be numbing yourself emotionally. Many of us scroll to numb. We just mindlessly scroll on our phones, on social media, on the internet, and we just numb ourselves through scrolling or watching TV or drinking wine. That's a big one in mom culture where we avoid our feelings and we think that wine is going to be the answer when it's not. It's truly just numbing the emotions and the hardship that we're feeling. Another subcategory are negative thoughts and having a negative mood. Many of us will feel guilt. We might experience depression, irritability, hopelessness, just having these negative thoughts, and they could be persistent. They could have a distorted sense of blame towards ourselves, or blame towards other people. And we might have reduced interest in activities. And so when we are experiencing symptoms of PTSD and we're so overwhelmed, somebody that has good intentions that maybe is coming over to help us and they just aren't doing it the right way. I know, like for my husband, this can be real, right? Like he wants to help, but it's not the way that I need him to do it. And it's one more thing that's not in my control and it's going to irritate the heck out of me. And I will have distorted blame on him. Like, this is all your fault. Everything in the world is your fault right now, right? But it's not the truth. It's distorted. It's a distorted sense of blame. And then we might also have reduced interest in activities. A lot of us who experience postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression already like know that mom can become our entire being, whether we like it or not. And our days can be encompassed in feeding and changing diapers and figuring out sleep and doing anything else that once resembled who we were before. Our interests and activities can just be like, heck no, like I cannot even, like, that does not sound enjoyable right now. I could not put another thing on my plate. And we might not even daydream about those things anymore. And then the fourth subcategory of PTSD is arousal. So, experiencing sleep disturbances or having poor concentration, feeling aggressive, or like hypervigilance, like you're always on edge scanning for threat and danger, can impact us. We're hyper aroused. We can't slow our nervous systems down. We can't focus on one thing. We can't sit there long enough to hear something from the beginning to the end. We can't enjoy a moment without like doing a scan for our sense of safety and our baby's safety. So, again, that was a lot. That was really like the DSM breakdown. If you are experiencing any of these things for a month following the traumatic event, then you might be experiencing PTSD. And if you are experiencing PTSD, you're not alone. There's a handful of us going through it related to birth. There's a handful of us going through it related to caring for our newborn. You're not alone in it. And PTSD in the perinatal season doesn't just have to be from birth trauma, from labor and delivery. PTSD in the perinatal season can be anything traumatic in the perinatal season. Perinatal meaning pregnancy, birth, delivery, and postpartum. And postpartum can be like, I mean, the book says, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, says that it's a year following childbirth, but those of us who've been in it know that it's a bit longer than that. But if you're experiencing trauma in these very vulnerable seasons of life, you might be experiencing PTSD. So, what do we do? What do we do for experiencing PTSD? What do we do if these symptoms of trauma really are living inside us and are impacting our daily functioning? They're impacting how we show up as a mom. They're impacting how we show up in our work. They're impacting how we show up in our relationships and our friend circles, our ability to build friendships. What do we do if that's the case? Well, the first thing that we do is we learn to practice being in our body. Being settled in our body and finding a sense of safety in our body, which can be so difficult to figure out how to do it. And so I invite you to not do it alone. I invite you to join community of people who get it, people who deeply get it and are on this path, and they can share tips and tricks of what's worked for them. You can practice together on how to be present. There's different versions of being present. Some people are able to sit and practice breath work and meditation in a very like intentional way. And others are not able to sit in that silence and it can almost make it worse. And so recognizing what person are you, right? Like what are your experiences right now? Are they allowing you to sit down and do some deep, soft diaphragmatic breathing that stimulates your vagus nerve and communicates to your brain that you are safe and you don't need to be in fight and flight mode? Are you able to do that right now? If not, if you can't sit and settle, are you able to physically move and get it out of your body? Are you able to shake? Are you able to release and shake your body and let it out? Are you able to turn on some music and dance and move your body? Move your hips. I don't know about you, but so many of us that I've spoken to that have birth trauma or just trauma in the perinatal season, we carry it in our hips. We carry it in our hips in a space inside ourselves that has opened up to birth a child and then come back together and holds the memory of doing so. And moving and shifting and grooving our hips can feel vulnerable. Like, when was the last time you shook your hips, right? When was the last time you shook your booty or shook your leg that's attached to your hip to release and let go? Where in your body do you notice that you hold on to the tension? My jaw, y'all, so I've been diagnosed with TMJ, not a surprise, but I was told that I have arthritis in my jaw. And it's a result of trauma because I hold stress in my jaw. I clench my teeth during the day. I clench and grind my teeth at night. I've had a night guard for years and years and years, but it did not prevent me from having TMJ or from having arthritis in my jaw. But now I recognize what I hold in my jaw. And now I know different exercises to release my jaw. And I can drop the tongue from the roof of my mouth and I can like massage my jaw. And I can be aware of when I'm clenching and practice releasing. And I'm going to physical therapy for TMJ. There's a lot of things we can do to start moving these pent up spaces in our body that are holding on to the trauma. And as we move things out of our body, we begin to feel safer in our body again. I was not able to do a silent sitting meditation on my first go around. I'm a busybody. My legs shake all of the time. My legs shook all the time. They don't anymore, thankfully. But my legs shook all of the time. I couldn't sit still. I was always fidgeting and moving about. And it was pent up trauma. And I had to learn how to move my body to release that. And that's really when I found Kundalini yoga. I absolutely adore Kundalini yoga because the meditative practices are physical in nature as well. You do these mudras and kriyas that are movements of your arms and your hands and your body while you're like focusing your breath in a certain way, or you're making a sound or chanting something in a certain way. So your brain is really occupied on how to do all of these things at once, and you're releasing pent up trauma as you do it. You're releasing energy from your body. You're increasing your vibration, how you feel after you do a hard, like, I don't know, 11-minute Kriya for Kundalini yoga. You're exhausted afterwards. And it feels so good to have that out. And then you find a space of peace inside at the end. But there's also more traditional ways that you can explore to support PTSD. There's medication to support navigating through the symptoms of PTSD. There's therapy that you can attend and participate in and learn techniques and process your traumas in a safe way. There's non-talk based therapies as well that can be very, very powerful. And some of those are like, how do you release, like, the emotional release exercises? How do you release the emotions from inside your body? Equine therapy can be very powerful. Acupuncture can be a powerful intervention. I've got no shortage of interventions to support you in navigating through this. And if you want support, I have a community and a club where we hold each other. We share what's real and raw. We build and we practice how to navigate through what we're experiencing together in community. And so it really encompasses the beautiful aspect of what healing truly is. Healing is done in community. Healing is done through movement, by connecting your brain and your body together. Healing is also done by calling in spirit and belief in something bigger than yourself, and understanding and working with the energies around you. And healing is also done through processing, through evaluating things in your life, through making changes, shifting how you move through life. Healing is done through how you eat, how you sleep, how you nourish your body. Healing is done through how you create a safe space in your home, a home that reflects the emotions that you want to feel, the energy that you want to feel. Healing is done in so many powerful ways. And if you're curious, hit me up, send me an email, pop over to my website, check out our Mamas Club, and we got you. We'll support you through it. I want to end this just by saying there's a lot of consequences to perinatal PTSD. Many of us who have experienced it and we live in it, if we're not getting help, there's side effects and consequences to that. And I want to share some of them because they're real. Oftentimes, people with PTSD that's been untreated or unsupported and they're not moving through it, they're in denial or they're trying to do it by themselves, they have an avoidance of getting the care they need in the postpartum season. They push it off. They don't want to address it. They don't want to tell their healthcare providers. They don't want to go to their follow-up appointments. They don't want to schedule a therapy appointment. They don't want to call somebody and say what they're going through. They don't want to go to a support group. That's a real consequence because that's where the healing happens. They might also have impaired bonding with their baby because you can't just turn off emotions to one part of your life. Once you start turning the dial down on wanting to feel something and disassociating from something in your life, that creeps across all aspects of your life. And when you're in this turmoil in your brain and you're just trying to survive and you're trying to be present with your baby and you're like, I've got this, I'm able to look at them, I'm able to like mimic their cues, I can coo at them, I can smile back, like we can do it in doses, we're okay. And then inside you're like navigating this terror, this horror that you're holding on to all the time, these flashbacks, these emotions, this depression, it's anxiety that can impact the bonding with you and your baby because the truth is their nervous system is intertwined with yours. They feel what you feel. They know what you're going through. And so if it's hard to do it for yourself, seek out help for them, for your connection with them, for their ability to regulate their emotions so that they can co-regulate with you, which it will change your life. When you're able to regulate yourself and co-regulate with your little one, it changes every aspect of your life. You feel happier. You feel like you have a sense of control again. You feel like you're doing something right. You feel connected to your baby. Your dreams for their future start becoming a reality in your head. All of us, when we have kids, we want to have a joy-filled life with them. We want to have a good relationship with them. We want to give them the world and we want to be a part of it. We want to witness and delight in them as we do. Other consequences that we can experience are difficulties in our partnership. If you have a partner that you're parenting with, our PTSD can also become their PTSD and everybody's kind of holding on to it. Sexual dysfunction can be a big one. Avoidance of future pregnancies. I feel like I'm Taylor Swift in that one. Like, hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Like, I am not having another child because I don't want to go through that again. Right? I know I'm capable of doing it, but that's just not something that I desire. And so I'm not birthing another baby. And I'm settled with that decision now. It took me a while to get there, but I'm settled with that decision now. And that was avoidance in the beginning. And now I'm choosing the path that I want for my future and for my son. And that might be your truth too. You might be avoiding future pregnancies because of this as well. You might elect to have a C-section in the future if you experience trauma in birth and delivery. Sometimes you can be told by the medical system that having a vaginal delivery after a C-section is difficult and not many people do it. That's a lie. It's possible. There's a lot of doulas that specialize in what we call VBACs, vaginal birth after cesarean, and you absolutely can do it. But many people don't want to go through it again. So they're like, let's schedule this. I'll prepare emotionally for it. I don't have to worry about the birth and delivery. I can control what I can control. It's going to go in like a procedure and I'm going to come out with a baby in my arms. And then we will mitigate the chance of loss of control and unexpected trauma. So a lot of people do plan to have a C-section in the future after experiencing perinatal PTSD. They also might have a difficult time breastfeeding. So breastfeeding, in order to successfully produce milk and let down and connect with your baby, there's hormone exchanges that happen. And the skin to skin with your baby And the connection of holding your baby and that bonding that happens helps produce something called oxytocin in your brain. And oxytocin is what is responsible for letting your milk let down and come out of you. And some of us, I had to take oxytocin, like sublingual tablets, to help my milk come out and release and let down because I wasn't able to easily. And that can be a result of PTSD. And then another surprising one that I didn't think about until I experienced it was the yearly reminders. Our children have birthdays, and as they have birthdays, we have birthing days. Their birthday is our birthing day. It's the day we birthed them. And as we remember what we went through to bring them into this world, that can be, for those who experience PTSD, it can be a trigger and it can relive that trauma. And it can take away from the joyous occasion of us celebrating our baby's birthday. So I'm really just going over these consequences of perinatal PTSD because I want you to understand the importance of reaching out and asking for help. You can ask me for help. I provide therapy to people in Arizona. I'm well trained in treating trauma, like over a decade of experience in treating complicated trauma. I also have my coaching programs that I can support you through. And then postpartum.net. Type in postpartum.net if you don't live in Arizona or you need to find somebody who you can see for a therapist inside your medical insurance network. Postpartum.net, they have a list of providers who are trained and certified in perinatal mental health, which, like myself, I am trained and certified in perinatal mental health. These are people who get it. These are people who have spent a ton of time investing in expanding their knowledge and resources and skills to support people in these seasons of life with these exact struggles. So go to postpartum.net, find somebody in network, find somebody trained. Also, be open to seeing somebody virtually. I just have to say, as a therapist, if you can open up to seeing people virtually, it increases your chances of finding a therapist that you align with and feel comfortable with. Also, the pandemic taught us that virtual therapy doesn't impact the quality and outcome of what you receive and experience in your healing in therapy. So those are a few resources for you guys. Also, if you live in Arizona and you want to build your community and connection and you need it to be free, check out Fourth Trimester of Arizona. I am a village lead for their Central Valley Village at the Idea Museum, and I'm there once a month on the second Wednesday of every month from 10 to 11:30, hosting a village, helping bring families together, bring parents together, and build the community to support you in healing and navigating and experiencing the motherhood that you dreamed of. I'm so happy you were able to join me today. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Thank you for setting up time in your day to process what you've experienced and dig deeper on, do you have postpartum PTSD? I hope this served you and I hope to hear from you. I look forward to seeing you guys next time on the Empower to Heal podcast. Motherhood is a beautiful journey, but it can also be overwhelming. Do you often find yourself feeling isolated, struggling to find balance, and yearning for a sense of identity beyond mom? Trust me, you're not alone. Join the Empowered Mamas Club, where you'll discover a supportive community of like-minded mothers. Gain valuable skills to navigate those highs and lows of motherhood, reclaim your sense of self, and become the engaged and present mom that you desire so that you can create cherished moments with your little ones. It's time to prioritize your well-being and rediscover the joy in motherhood. Click the link in the show notes and join us in the Empowered Mamas Club today. It has been an honor to share this space with you today on the Empower to Heal podcast, where we illuminate the strength you have within yourself to heal. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.